The wounded spirit and the spark of hope. On a distant planet where azure skies stretched endlessly over a horizon dotted with jagged mountains, the alien warrior Kale walked with heavy steps. His people, the Zorathians, revered strength above all else. Kale had once embodied their ideals, a fearless warrior whose name inspired awe across the lands. But today, his heart was heavy with despair. His daughter, Ryla, once destined to surpass even his legendary feats, had been struck down by fate. Ryla had been a force of nature, swift, strong, and radiant with the fire of youth. She had fought alongside her father in many battles, always at his side. But during a brutal skirmish with the rival Onyx clans, tragedy struck. A crushing blow from a spiked war hammer left her paralyzed from the waist down. The vibrant spark in her eyes faded, replaced by a haunting emptiness. For the Zorathians, strength was life, and those who lacked it were seen as burdens. Ryla's paralysis rendered her an outcast, her former comrades offering nothing but pity or disdain. Kale, though still a warrior in the eyes of his people, was plagued by guilt. He had failed to protect his daughter, and now, he was powerless to restore her to the warrior's path. A desperate choice. One night, beneath the cold light of 2 crescent moons, Kale sat alone, staring at the glowing embers of a dying fire. He had heard whispers of humans, strange, resilient beings who had forged an alliance with certain Zorathian clans. While many distrusted them, Kale had heard tales of their unmatched ingenuity and compassion. They lacked the physical prowess of his kind, yet they triumphed in battles through sheer determination and creativity. Kale made a decision that would shatter traditions. He would seek out a human. Not for war, but for hope. The next morning, Kale set out on a grueling journey to a human settlement on the planet's southern continent. After days of travel, he arrived at their encampment, a blend of alien and human engineering, with angular metal structures interwoven with native vines and glowing crystal nodes. Kale approached their leader, Captain Elias Ward, a seasoned human soldier known for bridging cultural divides. With a voice heavy with both pride and vulnerability, Kale explained his plight, his daughter's fall, her broken spirit, and his plea for help. He asked for a mentor, someone who could teach her to fight not with her body, but with her mind and heart. Elias listened intently before calling for Lieutenant Serena Kane, a tactical expert known for her unorthodox methods. Serena was young but carried an air of confidence that seemed unshakable. Her dark hair was cropped short, her uniform spotless, and her sharp green eyes carried a spark of curiosity. "I'll do it," Serena said, her voice resolute. "But this won't be easy for her, or for you. She'll have to learn to redefine what it means to fight." The meeting of 2 worlds. Kale returned home with Serena in tow, her presence raising many questioning brows among his clan. They regarded her with suspicion, her smaller, more fragile frame an enigma to their warrior culture. But Kale cared not for their opinions. This was for Ryla. When Serena met Ryla for the first time, she found a girl who had built walls around herself. Ryla's once bright eyes were dulled, her posture slouched in her mobility chair. She was polite but distant, clearly skeptical of this human's ability to offer anything of value. "Why are you here?" Ryla asked bluntly. Her voice was steady, but her words carried the bitterness of someone who had given up hope. "To show you what you're capable of," Serena replied, meeting her gaze without flinching. "You don't need to walk to be a warrior." Ryla scoffed. "What would you know of warriors? You're not Zorathian." "No, I'm not," Serena admitted with a wry smile. "But I know what it's like to face impossible odds and come out stronger. If you're willing to trust me, I'll show you how." The first steps. The training began with small victories. Serena did not ask Ryla to wield a sword or fight in the traditional sense. Instead, she introduced her to human concepts of strategy, focusing on the mind as the sharpest weapon. Together, they played tactical games, each move a lesson in foresight and adaptability. Ryla, though hesitant at first, soon found herself drawn into the challenge. In the evenings, Serena shared stories of Earth's history, of leaders who had overcome immense challenges and wars won through ingenuity rather than brute strength. Ryla listened intently, her curiosity slowly rekindling the spark within her. "You're not weak," Serena told her one night as they gazed at the alien stars. "You're just fighting a different kind of battle now. And if you let me, I'll show you how to win it." Ryla remained silent, her mind awash with doubt and flickers of hope. She wanted to believe Serena's words but feared disappointment. Still, something about the human's unwavering confidence was infectious. For the first time in months, Ryla allowed herself to consider the possibility of a future. A glimmer of potential. Over the next weeks, Ryla's transformation began. Serena introduced her to advanced human technology, a hover chair designed for mobility and combat. It was sleek and powerful, equipped with tools that would allow Ryla to interact with her environment in ways she hadn't imagined. Slowly, Ryla started to see herself not as broken, but as different. And different, Serena reminded her, could be powerful. Kale watched from a distance, his heart torn between hope and fear. He had taken a gamble in trusting the human, and now, he could only wait to see if his daughter's spirit could be reignited. Ryla's progress was slow, but it was progress. Each small victory, solving a tactical problem, mastering the controls of her new chair, brought a flicker of pride to her eyes. For Serena, these moments were more valuable than any battlefield triumph. "Strength isn't just about muscle or speed," Serena told her one day. "It's about resilience. It's about refusing to give up when the world tells you to." Ryla looked up at her, the faintest hint of a smile playing on her lips. "Maybe," she said quietly, "I can be strong in my own way." As the moons rose high over the Zorathian plains, Kale stood outside their home, watching his daughter and her human mentor with cautious optimism. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, he allowed himself to hope. The journey ahead would be long and fraught with challenges, but one thing was certain, Ryla's story was far from over. The rise of a new warrior. The first rays of dawn crept over the jagged peaks of the Zorathian mountains, casting a warm, golden glow across the training grounds. Ryla sat in her hover chair, watching the world awaken with a quiet determination. Today felt different. There was a fire stirring deep within her, a fire that had been all but extinguished since her injury. She wasn't just training to reclaim what she had lost. She was training to become something new. Serena stood before her, holding a small metal cube, a human-designed device for tactical simulations. The cube projected a holographic battlefield, a shimmering display of terrain, soldiers, and obstacles. To the untrained eye, it was a game. But to Serena, it was a tool to unlock Ryla's potential. "Today, you lead your first team," Serena announced, her voice calm yet commanding. "Your mission is to navigate this squad through enemy territory and secure the objective." Ryla's brow furrowed as she studied the holographic battlefield. Her initial instinct was to question her abilities. Could she truly lead? But Serena's unwavering confidence was infectious. Taking a deep breath, she nodded. "Let's do it." The first test. The simulation began, the hologram springing to life with vivid clarity. Ryla's virtual squad stood at the ready, waiting for her orders. The enemy forces were hidden, their positions unknown. Ryla's task was to outmaneuver them and secure the objective while keeping her team intact. Ryla's fingers hovered over the controls, her mind racing. Strategy had always been her father's domain, not hers. But Serena's voice broke through her doubt. "Trust your instincts. You've studied their patterns. You know what to do." Ryla nodded and issued her first command, sending a small scouting unit to sweep the left flank. The holographic soldiers moved swiftly, and moments later, they reported back, the enemy was fortifying their defenses along the central pass. Ryla analyzed the map, her mind piecing together a plan. She directed her main force to hold back, waiting for the enemy to commit to the pass. Meanwhile, she sent a second group to circle around the right flank, taking advantage of the rugged terrain for cover. As the simulated battle unfolded, Ryla's plan began to take shape. The enemy forces were drawn into the central pass, unaware of the flanking maneuver. When her second group launched a surprise attack, the enemy was caught off guard. Victory was swift and decisive. The holograms faded, and Serena smiled. "Well done, Ryla. That was a textbook maneuver." Ryla blinked, almost surprised by her success. For the first time, she felt a glimmer of pride, not just in the outcome, but in herself. Breaking old chains. While Ryla's tactical mind was sharpening, the emotional scars of her injury still weighed heavily on her. That evening, as the two sat beneath the twin moons, Serena decided it was time to address the deeper wounds. "Tell me," Serena said softly, breaking the silence, "why do you feel the need to be what you were before?" Ryla hesitated, her hands gripping the arms of her hover chair. "Because that's what my people respect. Strength. Power. Without it, I'm nothing." Serena's expression grew serious. "Who told you that?" Ryla looked at her mentor, confused. "It's just the way it is." "No," Serena said firmly. "It's the way they want you to believe it is. But strength isn't just about what your body can do. It's about what you choose to fight for, and how you fight for it. You've already shown more strength than most warriors ever will." Ryla looked away, her mind grappling with Serena's words. Could it be true? Could she redefine what strength meant, not just for herself, but for her people? The second trial. The next phase of training was unlike anything Ryla had experienced. Serena introduced her to a Zorathian relic, a ceremonial spear, its blade dulled for practice. "This isn't about combat," Serena explained. "It's about control and adaptability." Using her hoverchair's advanced mobility, Ryla practiced guiding the spear with precision. At first, it was awkward. Her movements were clumsy, and frustration bubbled to the surface. But Serena remained patient, offering guidance without judgment. "Think of the spear as an extension of yourself," Serena said. "Not a tool, but a part of you." Slowly, Ryla began to improve. The chair's responsive controls allowed her to maneuver with agility, and her hands grew steadier with each pass. By the end of the day, she could strike a target with impressive accuracy. Kale watched from a distance, his heart swelling with a mixture of pride and sorrow. His daughter was evolving into something extraordinary, something he hadn't dared to imagine. But he couldn't shake the fear that her people might never accept her transformation. A glimpse of the future. As the weeks passed, Ryla's confidence grew. Her bond with Serena deepened, built on mutual respect and understanding. Serena didn't see Ryla as broken. She saw her as a warrior in the making, a warrior who fought not just with weapons, but with her mind, her spirit, and her determination. One evening, Serena handed Ryla a datapad filled with human histories. "Read this," she said. "It's about leaders who changed the course of history, not with brute force, but with vision and resolve. That's the kind of warrior you're becoming." Ryla spent the night poring over the stories of Earth's greatest leaders, figures who had faced insurmountable odds and emerged victorious. For the first time, she felt a connection to something greater than herself. She wasn't just learning to adapt. She was learning to lead. The turning point. The next day, Serena unveiled Ryla's final challenge, a live simulation against a team of experienced Zorathian warriors. It was a test not of strength, but of strategy and leadership. As the simulation began, Ryla felt the familiar rush of adrenaline. She issued orders with confidence, guiding her team with precision. The enemy warriors underestimated her, focusing their attacks on her perceived weakness. But Ryla turned that weakness into a strength, using her hoverchair's agility to outmaneuver them and outthink their commander. When the simulation ended, the crowd of onlookers erupted into cheers. Ryla's team had won decisively. Kale stepped forward, his eyes glistening with pride. "You've done what I never could," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "You've shown our people a new kind of strength." Ryla looked at her father, then at Serena. For the first time in her life, she felt complete, not because she had proven herself to others, but because she had proven herself to herself. The warrior within. The Zorathian village buzzed with an unfamiliar energy. Word of Ryla's triumph during the live simulation spread like wildfire, sparking debates and whispers among her people. While some dismissed her victory as a mere anomaly, others saw it as the beginning of something greater, a shift in what it meant to be a warrior. Ryla, however, remained grounded. Though she felt a growing sense of pride, she knew her journey was far from over. True strength was not in the fleeting applause of others but in the unwavering belief in oneself. And as Serena often reminded her, belief wasn't given, it was earned. A new challenge. The morning air was crisp, carrying the faint scent of the bioluminescent flowers that adorned the hills. Serena approached Ryla with a new task. She held a cylindrical device in her hand, its surface etched with intricate Zorathian patterns. "This," Serena began, "is a tactical orb. It's used to train leaders in high-pressure scenarios. You'll face real-time challenges that adapt to your decisions. No scripts, no predictable outcomes." Ryla took the orb, turning it over in her hands. "And if I fail?" Serena smirked. "Then you learn. Failure isn't the end, Ryla, it's the foundation of growth." The orb activated, projecting a holographic battlefield around them. It was a sprawling desert landscape, complete with canyons, enemy outposts, and hidden traps. Ryla found herself commanding a squad of soldiers, each awaiting her orders. The test of leadership. The simulation began with an ambush. Enemy forces descended from the canyon walls, pinning Ryla's squad in a narrow pass. Panic surged through her veins, but she forced herself to focus. She scanned the terrain, her mind racing for a solution. "Divide the team," she commanded. "One group distracts them at the base of the canyon while the others scale the walls to outflank them." Her voice carried an authority she hadn't realized she possessed. Her soldiers moved swiftly, executing her orders with precision. The holographic battlefield erupted into chaos, but amidst the noise, Ryla's strategy unfolded. Within minutes, her team turned the tide, driving the enemy forces into retreat. The simulation ended, and the holograms faded. Serena clapped her hands, her face glowing with pride. "You're starting to think like a leader." But Ryla wasn't entirely satisfied. "I made mistakes," she said, frowning. "I hesitated." Serena knelt beside her. "Mistakes don't define you, Ryla. How you respond to them does. And today, you proved that you're capable of adapting under pressure. That's the mark of a true warrior." The clan's response. Later that day, Ryla's performance in the simulation was the topic of heated discussion within the clan's council. Some elders dismissed her achievements as mere tricks, products of human technology rather than genuine skill. Others, however, began to see her as a symbol of change, a warrior who defied tradition to carve her own path. Kale stood before the council, his voice steady but impassioned. "Our people have always valued strength of body, but what Ryla has shown is a strength of spirit. She embodies what it means to adapt, to overcome. If we do not evolve, we risk losing what makes us great." The council remained divided, their rigid beliefs clashing with the evidence before them. But Kale's words planted a seed of doubt, one that would take root in the days to come. A bond forged in fire. That evening, Serena and Ryla sat by a glowing stream that wound through the village. The water shimmered with an ethereal light, reflecting the twin moons above. It was a rare moment of quiet, a chance to reflect on the progress they had made. "Why did you agree to help me?" Ryla asked, breaking the silence. You could have stayed with your people, fought your own battles. Serena leaned back, her gaze fixed on the stars. Because I've seen too many people give up on themselves. I've been there, Ryla. I know what it's like to feel like you've lost everything. But someone once told me that strength isn't about never falling, it's about getting back up, no matter how many times you're knocked down. I saw that in you, even when you couldn't see it yourself. Ryla looked at her mentor, a flicker of gratitude in her eyes. Thank you, she said quietly. For believing in me. A new mission. The next day, Kale approached Serena and Ryla with a proposition. The Onyx clans, the same rivals responsible for Ryla's injury, were encroaching on Zorathian territory. The council was hesitant to act, fearing another costly conflict. But Kale believed they needed to strike first, and he wanted Ryla to lead the mission. Ryla's heart raced at the suggestion. The thought of facing the Onyx clans again stirred a mix of fear and determination. She looked to Serena, who gave her a reassuring nod. You're ready, Serena said. But remember, this isn't about revenge. It's about protecting your people and proving that strength comes in many forms. The journey begins. As the sun rose, painting the sky in hues of gold and crimson, Ryla prepared for her first real mission. Her team, a mix of seasoned warriors and younger recruits, gathered around her. Though some still harbored doubts about her abilities, they followed her orders without question. With Serena by her side, Ryla led the team into the wilderness. The path ahead was treacherous, the stakes higher than ever before. But Ryla was no longer the broken girl she had once been. She was a leader, a strategist, a warrior. As they disappeared into the horizon, Kale watched with pride and trepidation. His daughter was not only reclaiming her place among their people, she was redefining what it meant to be a Zorathian warrior. The first real battle. The air was heavy with tension as Ryla's team approached the jagged cliffs marking the edge of Onyx clan territory. The land here was barren and unforgiving, with sharp rocks jutting out like the teeth of some ancient beast. The faint glow of the twin moons cast eerie shadows, amplifying the unease that settled over the group. Ryla's hoverchair hummed softly as she led the way, her eyes scanning the terrain. She knew the Onyx clans would not welcome intruders, and their scouts would already be watching. This wasn't a simulation. It was real, and lives depended on her decisions. Serena walked beside her, her human armor gleaming faintly in the moonlight. Trust yourself, Serena said quietly. You've trained for this. Use everything you've learned. Ryla nodded, but her stomach churned with doubt. She wasn't afraid for herself, she was afraid of failing her team. Every step deeper into enemy territory was a step closer to proving whether she was truly ready. The ambush. As the group reached a narrow canyon, Ryla raised a hand to halt the team. The canyon walls loomed high above, their jagged edges perfect for an ambush. She had studied these tactics during her training with Serena, and now, those lessons felt like a lifeline. They'll attack here, Ryla whispered. Her voice was calm, but her heart raced. Send 2 scouts ahead to draw them out. The rest of US will hold back and prepare to flank. The warriors exchanged glances, some skeptical, others impressed by her decisiveness. Still, they followed her orders. 2 scouts moved cautiously into the canyon, their movements deliberate and slow. Moments later, the silence shattered. A barrage of arrows rained down from above, followed by the war cries of Onyx clan warriors. The scouts dove for cover, and the rest of the team sprang into action. Now! Ryla commanded, her voice cutting through the chaos. Flank from both sides, split their forces. The team moved swiftly, executing her plan with precision. Serena joined the fray, her human weaponry unleashing bursts of light that disoriented the enemy. Ryla stayed back, her mind focused on the bigger picture. She directed her team with clarity, adapting her strategy as the battle unfolded. The Onyx warriors, caught off guard by the tactical maneuvering, began to falter. Within minutes, Ryla's team had gained the upper hand. The canyon fell silent once more, the echoes of battle fading into the night. The cost of victory. As the dust settled, Ryla surveyed the scene. Her team had emerged victorious, but the cost was clear. 2 of her warriors were injured, 1 critically. The sight of them being carried to safety weighed heavily on her shoulders. "This is what it means to lead," Serena said gently as they tended to the wounded. "Victory always comes at a price. What matters is how you honor the sacrifice." Ryla nodded, her jaw tightening. She had known this wouldn't be easy, but seeing the consequences firsthand was a harsh reminder of the stakes. Still, the fact that her team had trusted her, followed her, and succeeded was a small but significant triumph. A new enemy. As the team regrouped, a scout approached Ryla, his face pale. "There's something you need to see," he said, his voice trembling. Ryla followed him to the edge of the canyon, where a strange symbol had been carved into the rock. It was the mark of the Onyx clans, but it had been altered, twisted into something unfamiliar. Serena examined it closely, her expression darkening. "This isn't just a warning," she said. "It's a challenge. They know we're here, and they're preparing for something bigger." Ryla's heart sank. The battle they had just fought was merely a skirmish. The real fight was still to come. The burden of leadership. That night, the team set up camp in a secluded grove. The wounded were stabilized, and guards were posted at the perimeter. Ryla sat by the fire, staring into the flames as doubt gnawed at her. "Do you think I made the right call?" she asked Serena, her voice barely above a whisper. Serena sat beside her, her gaze steady. "You did what needed to be done. You can't control everything, Ryla. What matters is that you led with courage and clarity. That's more than most can say." Ryla sighed, her shoulders slumping. "I just don't want to let them down." "You won't," Serena said firmly. "Because you care. And that's what makes you a leader. A warrior's resolve." The next morning, Ryla addressed her team. Her voice was strong, but her words carried the weight of someone who understood the challenges ahead. "We've faced our first battle together, and we've proven that we're stronger than they think. But this is only the beginning. The Onyx clans will come at us harder, and we need to be ready. Trust in each other, and trust in the plan. Together, we can overcome anything." Her words were met with a resounding cheer, the warriors rallying behind her. In that moment, Ryla felt something shift. She was no longer just a daughter trying to prove herself or a girl reclaiming her place. She was a leader. As the team prepared to move out, Cale arrived at the camp. His presence was a surprise, and his expression was unreadable. "I heard of your victory," he said, his voice low. "And I came to see for myself." Ryla braced herself for criticism, but instead, Cale placed a hand on her shoulder. "You've made me proud, Ryla," he said. "Not just as your father, but as a warrior." The word struck deep, filling her with a sense of validation she hadn't realized she needed. She looked into his eyes and saw not just pride, but respect. Marching toward destiny. With Cale's support and Serena's guidance, Ryla led her team deeper into enemy territory. Each step brought new challenges, but it also brought her closer to understanding what it truly meant to be a warrior. She was no longer bound by the limitations of her body or the expectations of her people. She was forging a new path, one that would change not just her life, but the future of the Zorathian people. And as the horizon stretched before her, filled with danger and opportunity, Ryla felt something she hadn't felt in years: hope. The shadow of betrayal. The morning was eerily quiet as Ryla's team marched through the ancient forest known as the Hollow Vale. The towering trees, their bark glowing faintly with bioluminescent veins, seemed to whisper secrets of battles long forgotten. The air was thick, not just with the damp chill of the forest, but with a tension that gnawed at Ryla's instincts. Serena, ever vigilant, walked beside her, her human-crafted scanner sweeping the area for signs of danger. "Something feels off," she muttered, her voice low. Ryla nodded. She had learned to trust Serena's intuition, and this time, it matched her own. The Hollow Vale was notorious for being a place where warriors vanished without a trace, and now they were deep within its grasp. But they couldn't turn back. The Onyx clans were gathering their forces just beyond the forest, and Ryla's team had been tasked with disrupting their supply lines. It was a mission fraught with risk, but one that could shift the balance of power. The sudden attack. As the group pressed forward, a deafening roar shattered the silence. Without warning, the trees erupted with motion as Onyx clan warriors descended from above. Their dark, spiked armor blended seamlessly with the shadows, making them appear as if they had materialized from the forest itself. Defensive positions. Ryla shouted, her voice cutting through the chaos. The team scrambled to form a perimeter, their weapons at the ready. Ryla quickly assessed the battlefield, noting the enemy's superior numbers and their strategic positioning. It was clear the Onyx clans had been waiting for them. Serena took a position beside Ryla, her weapon unleashing precise bursts of energy that forced the enemy to retreat momentarily. "This was no coincidence," she said grimly. "Someone tipped them off." Ryla's heart sank at the implication. A traitor among her people. The thought was almost too painful to bear, but there was no time to dwell on it. The battle raged on, and her team needed her leadership. Turning the tide. Ryla's tactical mind sprang into action. "Break into smaller groups," she commanded. "Draw them into the open where we can outmaneuver them." Her warriors obeyed, splitting into teams that darted between the trees. The Onyx warriors, accustomed to overwhelming their enemies with brute force, struggled to adapt. Using the forest's natural cover, Ryla's team began to turn the tide. Serena fought fiercely, her human ingenuity shining as she used her compact explosives to create barriers and choke points. Meanwhile, Ryla directed her hover chair with precision, using its agility to outflank the enemy and coordinate her team's movements. As the battle neared its climax, a sudden cry from one of her warriors drew Ryla's attention. She turned to see a figure clad in familiar Zorathian armor fighting alongside the Onyx clans. The traitor. Facing the betrayer. Ryla's blood boiled as she recognized the traitor, Leric, a young warrior who had once trained beside her. He had always been ambitious, eager to prove himself, but she never imagined he would betray their people. "Leric!" Ryla shouted, her voice echoing through the forest. "Why?" The young warrior hesitated for a moment, his face a mixture of anger and regret. "Because you're leading us to ruin," he spat. "You're not a real warrior, Ryla. You're a weakness our people can't afford." Ryla's heart clenched, but she refused to let his words shake her. "Strength isn't betraying your own to save yourself," she said, her voice steady. "Strength is standing together, even when it's hard." Leric sneered, raising his weapon. "Then show me your strength." The duel. The battlefield seemed to hold its breath as Ryla faced Leric. She didn't have the physical power he did, but she had something far greater, strategy and resolve. She activated her hoverchair's combat mode, its energy shields flaring to life. Leric lunged at her, his blade aimed for her heart. Ryla dodged with precision, using the chair's agility to stay one step ahead. She guided him into a narrow clearing, forcing him to fight on her terms. The duel was intense, each strike and counterstrike a test of will. Leric fought with brute force, but Ryla fought with purpose. She studied his movements, anticipating his attacks and exploiting his overconfidence. Finally, she saw her opening. As Leric overextended in a wild swing, Ryla used her hoverchair's thrusters to sidestep and disable his weapon with a precise strike from her spear. Leric stumbled, his weapon clattering to the ground. He looked up at Ryla, his defiance faltering. "You don't understand," he said, his voice breaking. "Our people, They'll never accept you. Ryla lowered her spear, her eyes filled with determination. Then I'll make them. Not by force, but by showing them there's another way. Victory and questions. With Leric subdued, the remaining Onyx warriors retreated, their ambush thwarted. Ryla's team regrouped, tending to their wounded and securing the area. The victory was hard-fought, but the revelation of betrayal cast a shadow over their success. Serena approached Ryla, her face etched with concern. "What are you going to do with him?" she asked, nodding toward Leric, who sat bound and silent. Ryla's gaze hardened. "He'll answer for his actions. But more importantly, we need to figure out how deep this betrayal runs. If there's one traitor, there may be more." A new resolve. As the team continued their journey, Ryla felt a newfound resolve. The battle had tested her leadership, her strength, and her resolve, but it had also revealed the fractures within her people. She realized her mission wasn't just to fight the Onyx clans, it was to heal her own. That night, as the camp settled into an uneasy quiet, Serena sat beside Ryla. "You're doing more than leading, you know," Serena said softly. "You're inspiring them to believe in something greater." Ryla looked at her mentor, the flickering firelight reflecting in her eyes. "Then I need to keep going. Not just for them, but for all of us." And as the stars glimmered above, Ryla knew she was no longer just a warrior reclaiming her place, she was a force of change, forging a path forward for her people and proving that strength came in many forms. The Reckoning. The Zorathian dawn broke over the distant peaks, casting the land in an otherworldly golden hue. The camp stirred to life, but an unspoken tension lingered in the air. Ryla sat in the center of the camp, her hoverchair motionless. Across from her, Leric sat bound, his head bowed, his once defiant eyes now shadowed by guilt. Around them, her team gathered in a tense circle, awaiting her judgment. The confrontation with Leric had exposed a dangerous fracture within their people. His betrayal wasn't just an act of selfishness, it was rooted in a deeper fear of change. And as Ryla looked into the faces of her warriors, she realized that Leric was not alone in his doubts. This wasn't just her battle to fight, it was her people's battle to evolve. A leader's decision. Ryla broke the silence. "Leric betrayed us, yes," she began, her voice steady but resolute. "But his actions stem from something greater than himself. Fear. Fear of losing what we've always known, fear of the unknown, and fear of what I represent." Leric raised his head, his expression conflicted. "You think you're changing things for the better," he said, his voice rough. "But what if you're wrong? What if you lead us into ruin?" Ryla leaned forward, meeting his gaze. "What if I lead us to something greater? What if we become more than what we've always been?" The crowd murmured, some nodding, others exchanging uncertain glances. Ryla felt the weight of their doubt pressing down on her, but she refused to falter. "I won't execute Leric," she declared. "He will return with us and face the council. But more than that, he will see what we're fighting for. If I can change his mind, perhaps I can change others too." The decision was met with mixed reactions, but no one voiced their dissent. Serena, standing quietly at her side, gave a subtle nod of approval. A dangerous path. As the team moved deeper into Onyx territory, the terrain became harsher, the air colder. The forest gave way to rocky plains dotted with jagged outcrops. It was a land of stark beauty but treacherous footing, a reminder of the challenge ahead. Serena walked beside Ryla, her steps careful on the uneven ground. "You handled that well," she said. "But you've taken a risk. Leric could still betray us." Ryla glanced at the bound warrior being escorted by 2 guards. "I know," she admitted. "But if we're going to win this war, we need to win over more than just battles. We need to win over hearts." Serena smiled faintly. "You're thinking like a leader." The Onyx Fortress. By nightfall, the team reached the edge of a massive gorge. Across the expanse, the Onyx clan's stronghold loomed, a fortress carved into the cliffs, its spiked walls glowing faintly in the moonlight. It was both a testament to their strength and a warning to those who dared challenge them. Ryla studied the fortress through a tactical lens Serena had provided. They've fortified the main entrance, she noted. But the northern ridge looks vulnerable. If we can get a team up there, we might have a chance. It's risky, one of her warriors said. The ridge is narrow, and if we're spotted. Ryla nodded. That's why we need a diversion. She turned to Serena, whose eyes sparkled with a mixture of mischief and determination. I think I can handle that, Serena said, already pulling out a compact device from her pack. The infiltration. As Serena and the small team prepared the diversion, Ryla led the rest of the group toward the northern ridge. The climb was grueling, the narrow path requiring precision and focus. Ryla's hover chair, equipped with advanced stabilizers, navigated the terrain with ease, but the tension in the air was palpable. Halfway up the ridge, the sound of explosions erupted from the fortress's southern side. Serena's diversion had begun. Onyx warriors poured out of the main gates, their attention drawn to the chaos. Move quickly, Ryla urged, her voice calm but firm. The team reached the ridge and began their descent into the fortress's vulnerable side. Using stealth and precision, they infiltrated the outer defenses, neutralizing guards with minimal conflict. Ryla's tactical acumen shone as she directed her team with a quiet authority that left no room for hesitation. The heart of the fortress. Once inside, the team navigated the labyrinthine corridors, their goal clear: disrupt the Onyx clan supply chain and gather intelligence on their plans. The fortress was a maze of dark stone and flickering torches, the air thick with the scent of oil and metal. Ryla's hover chair hummed softly as she led the way, her eyes scanning for traps and ambushes. They reached a large chamber filled with supplies, crates of weapons, food, and strange alien devices. But before they could begin their sabotage, the sound of heavy footsteps echoed through the hall. The doors burst open, and a towering Onyx warrior stepped inside. His armor was darker than the void, and his presence commanded fear. He was their leader, Vorak, a legend among their people. A battle of wills. Vorak's eyes fell on Ryla, his expression a mixture of disdain and curiosity. So, he said, his voice like grinding stone, this is the warrior who dares defy us. The one they whisper about. Ryla felt her heart race, but she stood her ground. I'm not here to defy you, she said. I'm here to show you that there's another way. Vorak laughed, the sound reverberating through the chamber. Another way? Strength is the only way. And you are no warrior. Ryla's team tensed, ready to fight, but she held up a hand. Strength isn't just about power, she said, her voice unwavering. It's about resilience. It's about adapting, surviving, and thriving. You think I'm weak because I'm different, but that difference is my strength. For a moment, Vorak seemed to consider her words. But then his expression hardened. Let's see how strong you really are. The battle begins. Vorak lunged forward, his massive blade swinging in a deadly arc. Ryla's hover chair propelled her backward, narrowly avoiding the strike. Her team engaged the Onyx warriors who poured into the chamber, but Vorak's focus remained on her. Ryla's mind raced. She couldn't match Vorak in brute strength, but she didn't need to. Using the agility of her hover chair, she maneuvered around him, drawing him into a trap. She led him toward a stack of unstable crates, using her spear to destabilize the pile. As the crates came crashing down, Vorak was momentarily stunned. Ryla seized the opportunity, delivering a precise strike to his armor's weak point. It wasn't enough to defeat him, but it was enough to make him pause. You fight well, Vorak admitted, his voice grudgingly respectful. But this isn't over. Ryla met his gaze, her determination unshaken. It doesn't have to be a fight at all. Think about what you're fighting for, and what you're losing. A new dawn. The team completed their mission, sabotaging the supplies and retreating before the Onyx forces could regroup. As they emerged from the fortress, the first light of dawn broke over the horizon. Ryla's team looked to her with a newfound respect, their doubts fading. Even Larrick, who had watched the events unfold in silence, seemed to see her in a new light. As they began the journey home, Ryla felt a deep sense of purpose. This wasn't just a battle for survival, it was a battle for the future. And she was ready to lead her people into it, no matter the cost. The legacy of a warrior. The journey back to the Zorathian village was marked by a solemn silence. The team moved through the rugged terrain, their footsteps heavy with exhaustion but their spirits carrying the weight of something greater. They had infiltrated the Onyx clan's fortress, disrupted their supply lines, and faced their legendary leader, Vorak. Yet, the victory was not just tactical, it was symbolic. Ryla had proven that strength wasn't defined by muscle or tradition but by resilience and resolve. As they approached the village, the first rays of sunlight illuminated the jagged spires in the distance. The sight of home, once a reminder of judgment and exclusion for Ryla, now felt like a beacon of hope. The mission had changed her, but it had also changed her team. She was no longer just Kale's daughter or the girl in the hover chair. She was their leader. A hero's welcome. The village gates opened, and the Zorathian people gathered to greet the returning warriors. The sight of Ryla leading the group drew murmurs from the crowd. Her presence, commanding and confident, was undeniable. Even those who had doubted her could not ignore the transformation. Kale stood at the forefront, his imposing figure softened by the pride that gleamed in his eyes. He approached Ryla, his voice low but steady. "You've done what no one thought possible. You've given our people hope." Ryla met his gaze, her own voice firm but touched with emotion. "Hope isn't enough, Father. We need to change. We need to redefine what it means to be Zorathian." The murmurs grew louder as the crowd listened. Kale raised a hand, silencing them. "Let her speak." The challenge of tradition. Ryla turned to face her people, her voice carrying over the crowd. "For generations, we valued strength above all else. But strength isn't just about the body. It's about the mind, the heart, and the will to rise when the world tries to break you." Her words hung in the air, challenging the deeply ingrained traditions of her people. Some nodded in agreement, while others crossed their arms in defiance. "We face enemies who are stronger than us, larger in number," Ryla continued. "If we cling to outdated ideals, we will fall. But if we adapt, if we embrace our differences and learn from others, we can become something greater." The crowd remained silent, the weight of her words sinking in. Ryla knew this was the hardest battle she had faced, not against an external enemy, but against the rigid beliefs of her own people. The council's verdict. That evening, the council convened in the grand hall, its towering walls adorned with the trophies of battles past. Ryla stood before the elders, with Kale and Serena at her side. Larrick, now unbound but subdued, sat quietly in the corner, his expression a mixture of shame and reflection. The eldest council member, a stern woman named Tevra, addressed Ryla. "You've returned victorious, but victory alone does not rewrite centuries of tradition. What you propose, a new definition of strength, threatens the very foundation of our society." Ryla held her ground, her voice unwavering. "What threatens our society is our inability to evolve. Strength without wisdom is a weakness. I've proven that we can be more than what we've always been." Tevra narrowed her eyes. "And how do you propose to prove that to those who still doubt?" Ryla glanced at Serena, then back at Tevra. "By continuing to lead. By showing through action that change is not only possible, it's necessary." A test of unity. The council deliberated late into the night. Ryla waited outside with her team, the tension palpable. Serena leaned against a pillar, her arms crossed. "They're afraid," she said quietly. "Afraid of what change means. So was I, Ryla admitted. But fear isn't an excuse to stand still. Finally, the doors opened, and the council emerged. Tevra stepped forward, her expression unreadable. Ryla of the Zorathian people, the council has reached a decision. You will be given the authority to lead a coalition against the Onyx clans. Your success, or failure, will determine whether your vision for our people has merit. Ryla nodded, her heart pounding. This wasn't just a test of her leadership, it was a test of her ideals. The final battle. The following weeks were a whirlwind of preparation. Ryla's coalition, composed of Zorathian warriors and their human allies, trained tirelessly. Serena's tactics and human technology blended seamlessly with Ryla's strategies, creating a force that was both innovative and formidable. When the day of the final battle arrived, the coalition stood united on the edge of the Onyx clan's territory. Vorac's forces, a sea of dark armor and snarling warriors, awaited them across the plains. Ryla addressed her forces, her voice carrying over the wind. Today, we fight not just for survival, but for a future where strength means more than brute force. Fight with your minds, your hearts, and your unity. Together, we are unstoppable. The battle that followed was fierce and chaotic. Vorac himself sought out Ryla, their rematch a clash of ideologies as much as skill. This time, Ryla was ready. Using her hoverchair's agility and her strategic mind, she outmaneuvered the towering warrior, delivering a blow that forced him to yield. The dawn of a new era. With Vorac's defeat, the Onyx clans retreated, their forces scattered. The coalition's victory was decisive, but its impact extended far beyond the battlefield. Ryla's leadership and the unity between Zorathians and humans had proven that adaptation was not a weakness, it was their greatest strength. Back in the village, the council convened once more. This time, there was no debate. Tevra stood before the gathered crowd, her voice carrying the weight of change. Ryla has shown us that strength is not bound by tradition. She has redefined what it means to be a warrior and a leader. From this day forward, we will embrace her vision and forge a new path. The crowd erupted into cheers, their voices echoing through the mountains. Ryla stood beside Serena and Kale, her heart swelling with pride and gratitude. A legacy forged in unity. As the celebrations began, Serena placed a hand on Ryla's shoulder. "You did it," she said, a rare smile gracing her face. "No," Ryla replied, her gaze sweeping over her people. "We did it. Together." And as the twin moons rose high above the Zorathian peaks, Ryla knew this was just the beginning. She had not only reclaimed her place among her people but had also paved the way for a legacy of unity, resilience, and boundless strength.